Okay, so we're at Siman Ayin Reish Hey, Seif Dalet. Says the Mechaber as follows: Shiras Hayam Koisvin Oisoi B'Shloishim Shitos. Shiras Hayam is written on 30 lines. Shita Rishayna Kedarka. The first line is written regularly. V'Shar Hashitos. The rest of the lines Achas Meinichen Be'emtza Revach Echad. The first line, you will leave a blank space in the middle of the line. Va'achas, and the second line, manichen harevach b'shnei makomes. You'll leave space in two places. Ad shetimtza hashita chaluka l'shalish, which means that there's going to be the third line will be divided into three parts. In other words, the first line is written regularly. So here you have the shira. This is what it looks like. The first line is written regularly. The second line has, well, actually, he has it the other way, right? The way he says it, the second line has a space in the middle, and the third line has two spaces with writing in three places, okay? And like this, it's a staggered setup, which is what he's about to say. V'nimtza revach keneged haksav. So wherever you have space, you have ksav above it. Revach keneged haksav, ksav keneged harevach. That's the setup of Shiras Hayam, which is called, this is what's known in rabbinic parlance as Ariach al Gabe Levena. That you have Ariach al Gabe Levena. Ariach is what's known in Bava Basra as a narrow brick. Levena is a wide brick. So Ariach al Gabe Levena is just another way of saying that it's a staggered setup. As opposed to Sifhei, Tzuras Shiras Hazinu, Kol Shita Yesh Be'emtza Revach Echad. Every line has one blank space in the middle. V'nim says Kol Shita Chaluka L'Shtayim, and you'll see that every line is split into two. Okay, so that's the difference. In other words, this is what's called Levena al Gabe Levena, or Ariach al Gabe Ariach, as opposed to Shiras Hayam, which is known as Ariach al Gabe Levena. No, that's staggered. This is not staggered. This is set up one on top of the other. The Koisvim Oisa and Shiras Hazinu is written on 70 lines. That's.
You said there's like 8 songs.
There are a number of songs throughout Tanakh. Yeah.
But most are in Tanakh, not Chumash.
Most are in Tanakh. These are the only two in Chumash. Well, by this Shiras HaBe'er. In Parashas Chukas, but there's no special way of writing Shiras HaBe'er, which is a question why that is.
Okay.
But now Hazinu is similar to Aseres B'nai Haman, and the Ran in Maseches Megillah discusses why the setup of Hazinu and Aseres B'nai Haman is straight with a hollow space in the center, as opposed to Shiras Hayam, which is Ariach al Gabi Levena staggered. And there are a number of reasons given, but the fun reason is because since both of those are talking about bad things, right? Aseres B'nai Haman is talking about bad people, right? And Hazinu is talking about when Klal Yisrael is not doing so well. So by Aseres B'nai Haman, at least, we want the Rishayim to fall down into the middle. Whereas by Oz Yosher, it's staggered and it's solid. The bricks, in other words, when you build a house out of bricks, so the bricks are staggered. The bricks are not stacked. Bricks are staggered, which makes the wall more solid. Sivav. Kasav hamole chaser oy hachaser moil. And just by the way, we saw in Siv Gimel that if a shira is written not as a shira, or vice versa, something that's not meant to be written as a shira is written as a shira, that would passel the Sefer Torah. Sifav, kasav ha-molei chaser or ha-chaser molei. Let's say you have the word ukshartem oisam la'ois al yedchem, right? So the word oisam, how do you spell the word oisam in the Sefer Torah? Aleph, taf, mem, right? Now, intuitively, if you were writing it, you would spell it aleph, vav, saf, mem. And there are a few tens of thousands of such examples in the Sefer Torah of words that could be written with. Right, we had it in the last pasuk or two of this past week's parasha. L'sayin of appears twice in the last two psukim, and once it's with a yud, once it's without a yud. Right, there are many words v'chashukeihem in Parashas Vayakel that appears 3 consecutive times. twice it's with a vav, I think, or twice it's without a vav, and once it's with a vav. There are many words in the Torah that are either mole with a vav or a yud, or chaser without a vav or a yud. So if one misspelled a word, he spelled a word that was meant to be with a vav or a yud, without it, or vice versa. Ashakasav mila shehi kri uksiv. You have in a number of places in the Torah a letter that's written one way, yet verbalized a different way. Kigain shakasav yishkevena b'makam yishgelena oy batechurim b'mkaim uba'afulim. These are examples of places in the Torah where you have a kri and a ksiv, ukayetzebehem, puzzle. So if you wrote the word as you're meant to say it rather than as you were meant to write it, that would passel the Sefer Torah, even though, ironically, what's written is what you say. It's still not kosher. It has to be written the way the Torah is meant to be written.
What about?
Is a fantastic question. So what Rav Moshe is referencing is a halacha in Aruch and Siman Kuf Mem Gimel, which is a Gemara in Kedushin on Daf Lamed, where Chazal tell us that we are not bekian. I don't know what the English word for that is, but we are not bekian in chaseris v'yaseris. We don't have clear exactly which words are meant to be with a vav and which words are meant to be without a vav, and therefore the Ramah paskins in, I think it's the Ramah, I don't think it's the Mechaber. I might be wrong. The Shulchan Aruch says in Sefer Kuf Mem Gimel that we would not put a Sefer Torah back in the middle of Kriyas HaTorah because of a mistake like this, an extra vav or a missing vav. Right now, there's the word oisam, for instance. If it would be with a vav as opposed to without a vav, we would not put back a Sefer Torah. So there are different pshatim in the Achreinim of why that is and whether or not that is the case lahalacha. So halacha l'maisa, I believe, nowadays it would actually depend on the reasons given in the Achrein, and for that there's also a Minchas Chinuch that says that the particular example that I gave of Ukshartem Oisam, you would put back the Sefer Torah because that's part of Tefillin and Mezuzahs. And he says in Tefillin and Mezuzahs we certainly are Bekiyim. But be that as it may, some say that this issue has already been straightened out. I think that Nezer holds that way, and therefore you would put back a Sefer Torah, even for Cheseres v'Yaseres. Others disagree. The Ramah gives a reason. Whatever. It's a sheer unto itself. But it's a good question. Haggah. The Ramah says over here, V'yesh oid dvarim. There are other things. Shenagu behen ha-seifrim, that there is a, what we would call a Messiah amongst the seifrim. K'may shehatiku ish mi pi ish, passed down person to person through the generations. K'may. But Oisius Gedolis Uktanis, right? So we know, for instance, that the base of Bereshis is a large letter, right? Livkois Lisboid Lasara Vilivkoisa, so we know is a small chaf, right? Vayikra we know has a small aleph. There are many such examples in the Torah of Oisius Gedolis, large letters, or Ktanis. The Hanakudais, there are places in the Torah where a word has, right? Vayishakehu, where Esav kissed Yaakov, so there we all know that there are dots on top of the word. V'hameshunais, this we don't have nowadays. This went by the wayside in the time of the Chassam Sefer, but for many thousands of years, there was Sefer Torah. If you look at old Sefer Torah, you'll see that there are letters that were written meshunais, strange. So there's a lot of words. There's meshuchais, there's akumais, there's meshunais, and they're all true. V'oid na'agu b'minyan hashitin, another minig or Messiah amongst the Seifrim regards how many lines there should be in a Sefer Torah. Last Eisam, how many to make it? Like Pachas Me'arban V'Shmeina. So one Messiah says not less than 48. Now that's based on a particular, the Rambam's Girsa in the Masechah Seifrim. The Yeshayimrim, others say Arban V'Shtayim, 42, which is the prevalent Girsa in the Masechah Seifrim, and that's the minig nowadays. But for many hundreds of years, the minig was 48. Either one is acceptable. For L'Yosem Yishishim, but not more than 60. On the other hand, in this very same Masechah Seifrim, there are minhagim brought down of 72. I once got an aliyah in the Shtiblach here in Ramat Beit Shemesh Beis, and there were 66 lines in that Sefer Torah. So there are different minhagim, but these are, as we'll see at the end over here, these are not ma'akiv, but these are different messiahs. L'maisa nowadays also Sefer Torah more or less, are 42 lines. V'oid na'agu b'roshei hashitin lemala mishiris hayam. So this is also something that you can see over here. There's a minig here, right? He's talking about these 5 lines above Shiris Hayam. So he says, that there should be 5 lines, which indeed you'll see over here. And there's a tradition regarding which words should be at the beginning of those lines. Habayim, Vayabasha, Hashem, Meis, B'Mitzrayim, and underneath the Shira, there are another 5 lines. Vaschalasan, Vatikach, Sus, Vayetzu, Vayavoyu, Vayiyu. So that's in terms of that. Now you'll see here in the Shach and the Taz, there are different girsais, whatever. It's not, you should see it, but it's not for us for right now. And then he talks about V'yu Lamala Meshiris Hazinu Shisha Shitin. On top of Hazinu, as you see over here, there should be 6 lines. So Haschalasan, and again, there's a tradition regarding which words are at the beginning, and over here at the end, which words are at the end, and he enumerates them. And again, if you take a look in the Shach and the Taz, you'll see different mistakes and the Tos and the Girsa, and so on and so forth. The Ramah finishes off, V'chol elu hadvarim lemitzvah. All these things are only lemitzvah. It's not ma'akiv. V'imshina loy pasal. If one does them differently, it doesn't passel. Now the question is, when he says this, is he referring to everything that it said over here in these simanim? So the answer is b'pashtus not. He's just referring. He began his words by saying v'yesh oid dvarim, and he's finishing off by saying elo hadvarim. These things in this sif that I mentioned over here, meaning the number of lines, a dotted letter, a large letter, a small letter, etc. The things that are listed here are not ma'akiv, but other things mentioned here in these simanim certainly are ma'akiv, which is explicit at the beginning of this siman, right? We saw if there's a parasha where there's not meant to be a parasha, and so on and so forth. Those things definitely are ma'akiv. So this Ramah, it's just this sif, yeah. Now there are those that say that it goes on the whole Reish Ayin Beis and Reish Ayin Gimel. Okay, that's a different discussion. But Lamaisa, the pashtus is it's going on this sif. Siman Reish Ayin Vav. Siman Reish Ayin Vav is discussing the halachas of the Shem Hashem, which are some of the most complex halachas in the Hilchas Safras, as it were. There's a Sefer you may have heard of called Keses HaSefer, which was written by Reb Shlomo Gansfried, the author of the Kids of Shulchan Aruch, and it's kind of the Bible for Seferim. And over there, in Siman Yud, Yud Aleph, and Yud Beis, he has 3 full simanim, which could take a very long time to learn them properly. And over there, he discusses all the halachas of Shem Hashem. Over here in Siman Reish Ayin Vav, the Mechaber just runs through them very, very quickly. So he begins, Ta v'dileg teva yoser, if one made a mistake. So this we discussed, the Gra already reminds us that we discussed this a few simanim ago. Ta v'dileg teva yoser, if someone skipped a word in the Sefer Torah, yachal l'tloisa bein hashitin, right? So we mentioned at the time that it's common in English as well. When you're writing something and you miss a word, so you make a little arrow pointing up and you fill in the missing word between the lines. So you do the same thing in a Sefer Torah, just without the arrow. Now sometimes when you're editing, right, if you've ever edited a document, the truth is, even in a Word document, you have it today. You have comments on the side, right? You can hit that little balloon and you can add a comment on the side. And when you're editing something by hand with a pencil, so also you'll make a little asterisk and you'll fill in your comment on the side. So that's what the Mechaber is saying over here. If you missed out a word, you're going to add in the word between the lines, above the space where the word should be, but not in the margin on the side. That is not permitted. There's a Tshuva Saran about that, or Moshe Feinstein has a Tshuva about it. It's not permitted. If you want to fill in a letter or a word, it has to be done between the lines, not...
Most of the words.
Oh, so we'll see in a minute about most of the word. Halacha Beis. Afal Pisha Omer B'tchilas Hasei. Now this is already, now we're getting into the heavy halachas. Oh, Givaldiga question. When you are Taila, where do you put the word? So this is a machlokes between the aforementioned Keser HaSefer and a different sefer called Melech HaShamayim. Melech HaShamayim is a sefer that was written by the author of the Yad HaLevi, Rabbi Yitzchak Dov Bamberger, who was the Rav in Würzburg, Germany, in the same tkufa as Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, which is a whole different story for a different time. But the Melech HaShamayim wrote a sefer on Hilchas Stam, and the Kesef Sefer wrote a sefer on Hilchas Stam. They lived at the same time. They corresponded with each other. They had many, many disagreements, and they quote each other in their Sfarim, rarely in a complimentary manner. So this is one of those places. They have a disagreement about where the word should be written. One of them, I don't remember which one, says that it should be in between two words, and the other one says it should be above, I think, the following word. Let's say you missed the word Moshe. Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Lemar, and you missed out the word Moshe. So where do you fill it in? So one of them says that you fill it in above the blank area between El and Lemar. That's what one of them says. And the other one, I think the Melech HaShamayim, says that it should be, I think, on top of the word Lemar. Halacha Beis. First we'll say Halacha Beis outside, and then we'll read the words inside. There's a halacha, if you miss the word at the end of the line, where do you put it? I guess the question would be, do you put it on top of the last word on the line, or do you put it on top of the first word of the next line? Tzarachian. You know what I would think, to tell you the truth? I would think that you should put it on top of the last word of the line, but sticking out a bit into the margin. So no, you can't put the entire word in the margin when it's meant to be earlier in the line. But when, in this case, I would think that that's what you should do. You should put it above the last word at the end of the line, sticking partially into the margin. Daf means a column. In this context, the word daf means a column, which, like Amud Yomi, would be a daf, yes, in this context. Now, halacha beis, again, we'll say it outside. Halacha beis is as follows. When somebody begins writing a Sefer Torah, tefillin, or mezuzahs, they have to say explicitly the words, Hareini kosev l'shem kedushas Sefer Torah. Hareini kosev l'shem kedushas mezuzah, whatever it is that they're writing. Now, in addition to that, let's say you're writing a mezuzah. So you begin the mezuzah, or forget it. Let's talk about what we're talking about, a Sefer Torah. So you're starting a Sefer Torah. So you say, Hareini kosev l'shem kedusha Sefer Torah. You write the words Bereshis bara. Now you get up to a Shem Hashem, right? Bereshis bara Elikim. Before you write the Shem Hashem, you have to say Hareini kosev l'shem kedusha Hashem. You don't have to say the words Hareini kosev. You could just say l'shem kedusha Hashem, right? And that's an additional statement that you have to make every time you write a Shem Hashem. So now let's see that inside. Afal pi sha'omer b'tchilas haSefer. Even though when you began the Sefer Torah, you stated shekoisvei l'shem kedusha Sefer Torah. Nonetheless, v'chol pam shekoisev Shem Hashem. Shekoisev Shem mehashem she'enam nimchakim, which means a Shem Hashem. Come back to that in a moment. Tzarech loymar shekoisvei l'shem kedusha Hashem. V'im loy asaken pasal. So you started the Sefer Torah, you said, Hareini kosev l'shem kedusha Sefer Torah. You wrote the words, Bereshis bara Elikim. And then you realized, I did not say l'shem kedusha Hashem before I wrote the word Elikim. Sefer Torah is pasal. So you can have an entire Sefer Torah written beautifully, most stunning ksav in the whole world. But if the Sefer forgot somewhere in the middle of Parshas Ekev to say l'shem kedusha Hashem before he wrote Hashem Hashem, the Sefer Torah in its entirety is unkosher. Now this applies to, as the Mechaber said, mehashemay she'enam nimchakim. Shema she'enam nimchakim applies. There are 7 shemas which are listed out that are not allowed to be erased. If someone erases them, one is over on an iser da'iraisa. Okay, so if you have, for example, right, we said Bereshis bara Elikim, right? So Bereshis bara Elikim, so that's not Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's Elikim. It's a different shame. But all 7 names of Hashem, which are not allowed to be erased, one has to be Mekadesh when writing a Sefer Torah. This is a discussion in the Paiskim, but that's the Psak LaHalacha as the Mechaber says it. Hagah, says the Ramah, Kasav Shem Elehim Acherim L'Shem Kedusha. Now this is actually a Maisa Shahaya. There was a Sefer who called an expert in Stam, a Rav who I know, and the Sefer said to him, I have a shaila. He said, what's your shaila? He said, I've been writing mezuzahs, And I've written a few hundred mezuzahs, a few thousand mezuzahs, whatever it is, and I'm writing a mezuzah now, and I just wrote the words Elohim Acherim, right? And I forgot to say L'Shem Kedushas Hashem before I wrote the word Elohim. So now this Sefer is a world-class Am Haaretz because one has to say L'Shem Kedushas Hashem when he's writing a Shem Hashem. However, Elohim Acherim is referring to Avodah Zarah, which is certainly not a Shem Hashem, so one would not want to be Mekadesh, a Shem of Avodah Zarah. That's a pretty nonsensical thing to do. In fact, says the Ramah, you should not do that. So now the question is, this guy, all the mezuzahs he's written for the last 5 years, are they puzzle? So the Ramah says they're kosher. Kasav Shem Elohim Acherim L'Shem Kedusha. Let's say a Sefer messed up, and he says, Hareni Kaisel L'Shem Kedusha Hashem, before he writes the word Elohim Acherim, Einai Pasal. The Ramah says it's not going to passel your mezuzah or your Sefer Torah. Why not? To have a kemakdish bali mumin lamizbeach. The halacha is when bringing a carbon, the carbon cannot have any blemish, can't have a mum. Now, what if one, and when one is setting aside an animal to be brought as a carbon, right? So one says verbally that this animal is set aside to bring as a carbon. Now, what if the animal has a blemish? It has a mum. So it's not kosher, it's not fit to be brought on the mizbeach as a carbon. So nothing happened. So the same thing over here. He said, Hareini Kaisel Hashem Kedushas Hashem for an Avodah Zarah, right? So nothing happened. It just doesn't catch on, right? It's like if a person is Mekadesh a guy, right? To marry her, there's no Kedushin, there's nothing happened. It doesn't catch on at all. Now it happens to be that this is a tremendous machlokes in the Achreinim, and the Kesses HaSefer actually disagrees with this Ramah and Paskins Halacha L'Maisa that all the mezuzahs this guy wrote are pasul. 742 mezuzahs that this person's written in the last 2 years are all pasul according to the Kesses HaSefer, but the Ramah says that it's not pasul. Now, just by the way, when we said Bimlay Asa Kain pasul, the place can deal with whether this is a deraisa or a derabanan. This din of being Mekadesh Shemus, is it a deraisa or a derabanan? Let's just see the two shafts over here. You can replace the urea. What you would have to do is you would have to take that urea out and write a new urea. Or nowadays, as we discussed, I think before, you would do what's called klifa. You would just, that's why you would do klifa. If it was not a Shem Hashem, you would just erase it. But when, the same way you peel a carrot, so the carrot peel comes off whole, there's no mechika happening, you're just removing it from the carrot, lahavdil. So the same thing over here would apply. The experts know how to do klifa, and they could just remove the Shem Hashem from the Sefer Torah, and the Sfaradim hold that that's mutter, Ashkenazim hold it's asar, but Baruch Hashem, there are Sfaradim that are willing to do it for us for 40 shekel of Shem Hashem. So that's generally how it's done. Yeah, there's a guy here in the Merkaz Miskari who does it. Says the Shach, V'habach Pasak, the imniskavin v'kasav l'shem kedusha. If he was mechavan and he wrote it l'shem kedusha, afal pish lehosi b'sfasav eina pasal b'diavad. We said that when you are writing the Shem Hashem, you have to say l'shem kedushas Hashem. Now, what if you didn't say l'shem kedushas Hashem? You just thought it. Is thinking it enough? Reb Zalman says it's not enough. So this is a machlokes. So the Bach al Ben Shach quotes the Bach, that the Bach says that it's kosher. If you thought it, that's enough. How he says v'chein pasuk harav, that's Rabbeinu Baruch Chaim Siman Lam Beis if you test, unless harav, I'm not sure, unless harav means the Ramah, might mean the Ramah, because it's a discussion over there by Ibud and Siman Lam Beis, but that's not if you test. If you test is by Shemus. The Sagi b'di'evid, the Ramah over there passes that it's okay b'di'evid kishem mechashev shekosev ha'askaras l'shman. Why? And this is very, very important. Since when you started the Sefer Torah, you said Hareini kosev l'shem kedusha Sefer Torah, so you have the Amira by Hareini kosev l'shem kedusha Sefer Torah. In that case, if you thought when you got up to Hashem, Hareini Kaisel Hashem Kedushas Hashem, in your mind, that's enough. In other words, the Amira of L'Shem Kedusha Sefer Torah can be mitzaref with the machshava of L'Shem Kedusha Hashem to kasher your Sefer Torah. But if you only thought Hareini Kaisa L'Shem Kedusha Sefer Torah, so over there in Siman Lamed Beis, if you test, we paskin that the tefillin are puzzle. If the Sefer thought Hareini Kaisa L'Shem Kedusha tefillin, that's puzzle. But if he said L'Shem Kedusha tefillin and he thought L'Shem Kedusha Hashem, that combination works.
Even though he's not talking about what the Taz suggests about saying
that's a whole different. That's something else. That's a bir halacha and Siman Lamed Beis if you test where he's mekel b'safek. But that's not what we're talking about over here. Oh, the Taz is eitzah. There's a big machlokes between the Kesef Sefer and many others whether that eitzah is a good eitzah or a bad eitzah. The Chidah says it's a bad eitzah and you should not do it. Others say it's obviously the Taz says it's a good eitzah and you should do it. But there's a different pshat. The Ber Heitev over here in Yoreh has a different pshat in the Taz, and he says that the Taz only meant to do that so that if you thought it would be enough. In other words, according to him, the Taz is a chumrah, not a kula, right? Just for those watching at home, the Taz is the one that said that when you begin the Sefer Torah, you should say, Hareini Kaisa L'Shem Kedusha Sefer Torah, V'chol Askar Sheyesh Bar L'Shem Kedusha Hashem. I'm writing all the Shem is L'Shem Kedusha Hashem, and that covers you for the whole Sefer Torah. So many Achronim are like, what are you talking about? Because I said, back in November, of 2024, L'Shem Kedusha V'chol Askar Sheyesh Bar L'Shem Kedusha. So now today, right, where are we? In July of 2026. So if I wrote a Shem Hashem and I forgot to be Mekadosh, so that's going to help, doesn't make any sense. So some say, yeah, that's what the Taz holds. But the Ber Heitev over here says, no, the Taz just means to say that if you said V'chol Askar Sheyesh Bar L'Shem Kedusha Hashem back then, and now today you thought it, then it works. Comes out that the Taz is a chumrah according to that, because according to this shach, right, as long as you said L'Shem Kedusha Sefer Torah without the shemus, thinking is enough now. So there's a machlokes, what's the pshat in the Taz? Until today, it's machlokes amongst the Meirei Hira, if it's kedai to do like the Taz, or if it's not kedai. He does says not to do it, because then you're just going to forget to be mekadosh shemus. You're going to rely on that. Okay, let's just see Sifkat and Beis in the shach. You might think that, let's say you wrote Bereshis Bar Elikim and you forgot to say L'Shem Kedusha Hashem when you wrote the word Elikim. So I have a great idea. I'll just say it now and I'll just write over it. There's a second layer of ink, right? That doesn't work. That's what the Shach is saying over here. Halacha l'maisa, everyone agrees to it, yes. And there's a lot of times when we have a number of tzirufim to be mekel, so we'll say, and do havaras kolmas, as like another tziruf. But by itself, we don't rely on that ever.